Alrighty, we are ready to start, and we are already behind enough, so let's just get into it. So, this is Skylanders Giants, which Skylanders is quite famous for being a Toys to Life game, which means that the plastic toys outside of the game will activate characters inside of the game. We will be using this to hopefully go fast and perform a good chunk of skips. Bad start. So, as you can see on screen, I have two characters, one not going well, and that's not that it's a co-op one, that's me controlling both of the characters at the same time. So, what I'll be performing right now is called the rock jump, which is essentially a jump using a bounce pad. You can't naturally jump in this game, so we will be taking advantage of every single bit of height we can possibly get. So, the character on screen right now is Flameslinger. More specifically, it's the Series 2 version of Flameslinger. He is by far the fastest Skylanders for the speedrun. I will now immediately be swapping off to another character, Room Boom, who is very easy to clip with. There is another way to do this clip where you drop in player 2, but I'm very bad at it, so I'll just be going with this one instead. And back to Flameslinger. So the clip itself that I just did works because there's a small piece of the gate where, although it looks like it, there isn't actually collision. In this collision, in this lack of collision, we can place either another Skylander, as I mentioned, we can drop in player 2, or we can do as I did on screen right now, which involves placing Shroom Boost Shell Slingshot in a very small position and then having it throw us outside of it. So right now I'm just going to be dashing ahead, clearing out some of the enemies. And as you can see there, the block didn't push even though I ran up against it. That's a weird thing that can happen sometimes. It's quite rare, so it's not too bad. So this part right now is literally just running and destroying these chains, and that didn't go as well as I could have hoped. Usually you can destroy that with 2 arrows and then dashing into it. I couldn't here. And this is the final change where we'll actually be doing a small shortcut. By using the flame circle, I'll talk more about that later, we can instantly destroy the rocks on that chain and break it much quicker than normal. So, now we will be, because this game is decently difficult, we usually play the chapters out of order. And we will immediately be going into chapter 14, which is not commonly done in Skylanders speedrunning, but it gives me the perfect opportunity to talk about version differences, which is quite important with this one. Well, let's start. I'm playing on a PS3 disc copy. That's not a digital, but this game on the PS3 is very slow. I think with estimates it loses around 3 minutes compared to the optimal version, which is replayed on Wii U. There's a good chunk of that in the loading screen between the chapters and the ship. That's really bad. And then there's a Wii exclusive trick, a debug feature you could call it, in this chapter that allows us to not only skip a bit of walking but also farm some missiles, which you can see in the bottom right corner besides a coin laying down. This trick with farming missiles and the walking skip in this level alone saves around 20 seconds. Other than this on loading screen, the drop-in animation for the different Skylanders is actually shorter on Wii, well, more specifically Wii on Wii U. And every time I open a stat screen, which I'll be showing you later, that's also significantly longer to open and to close on the PS3. Okay, so we're doing this flying to get around, and we're going to be picking up a key to open the door, because we are effectively in the story infiltrating an enemy fortress right now, and they've obviously, for security reasons, locked the doors. Well, another thing you might be noticing in this chapter is that instead of holding down the boost button, I tap it in a timely manner. This keeps the ship at top speed, and it significantly lowers the amount of boost I would need to use. So we will now be going into a bit more of gameplay with gameplay on foot with Flameslinger. We will again be using his dashes to move as fast as possible, and a bit more combat now. So this is probably a perfect moment to talk about the Flame Circle. The Flame Circle is on a very specific upgrade path, which allows us to do these massive and flailing circles, which give Flameslinger a lot of range and the ability to attack a lot of enemies very quickly. And I'm just quickly completing a puzzle with these laser beams to gain access to this key, which I will then be running around with, and then placing into a new lock. Just a bit of a thing I'm doing constantly because it allows me to cut corners very tightly, as well as effectively extend the speed, not the speed, the distance at which the top speed of Flameslinger can be carried. And the battle gate is open, and we'll be going back into the ship. So the ship is kind of boring, to be honest. There's not a lot to it. It's just keeping straight lines and making sure to move effectively, which is actually pretty easy. So here I'll be doing, again, utilizing slowly tapping the boost button to completely skip an upgrade, not an upgrade, and one of these boost fuel, those pink light up things. And this is one of the parts where PS3 loses time because we can't farm missiles, as I mentioned earlier. I'll have to kill all of these enemies, which give me 4 missiles. 1 we will be using here, and 3 of which I will be saving later. Well, saving 4 later, as well as picking up a few missiles in a bit. So throughout these aerial sections, at part, the developers actually scattered some of these missiles around that you can pick up by flying into certain coins. There's really only one spot where we consistently know we can pick up these missiles, and I'm obviously going to be taking advantage of it. So when flying through this, what should I call it, beam thing, you might have noticed I just picked up another 2 missiles. And these will then be used here, and I will immediately get 2 back by destroying one of the missiles containing them. So going into this stall, we will try to tap the buttons necessary to get the very fast boost at the same time before the cutscene starts. This allows us to get this boost very shortly for the cutscene and have its momentum actually carries us forward for a bit when it started, but I sadly didn't get it. So right here I'm paying very much attention to run as close to the wall as I possibly can, and that's to hopefully get a battle gate skip. We didn't get it. The battle gate that is on screen right now can actually be skipped if you are a little lucky, I would say, because I don't know how to do it consistently. But yeah, and the way we do that, the most consistent way we know about to do that, is by running as close to the wall as possible, but as you can see I didn't get it, sadly. There you can get another one of these dashes and then carry a bit of the momentum into the cutscenes, but again, I missed it, which is really annoying. And we're back in the ship. So this level is very, very long, and there's not a lot of interesting things to talk about. We'll get back to it later. Not the level, but some of the more interesting stuff. Again, just quietly timing these boosts and not holding down the button.
Well, if that's the case, may I interrupt you for a minute?
Of course, feel free.
Yes, I would like to remind you of our fantastic prizes. You can use the prizes link to find the details on our Discord, if any other prizes are added. Currently, we have the following grand prizes: a custom ESA PlayStation 5, a Tears of the Kingdom themed Nintendo Switch, and DualSense Edge for PlayStation 5. The minimum bits are cumulative over the course of the marathon, so multiple spawn. Oh, yeah. The whole, all these prizes will be given to the lucky ones who will donate. So you know, get the race going.
So this is the longest flight section, I believe. As you can see, I have the ability to pick up a lot of these boosts, but I will be skipping quite a few of them again to just maintain more direct lines. this one right here, it makes sense to get, as I'll be going into this pretty long section now. Again, just making sure to maintain straight lines and avoiding the obstacles. And like, if you actually hit the obstacles, you can get rapidly flung out, of course. So at times I will go a bit safer to make sure that simply does not happen. And now we are coming up to almost at the end of this flying section, and thereby at the end of this level. Again, I'll be picking up a few more rockets. These are the final two we will need. And destroying this field. So landing now, there will be well, technically the fourth skip of the one, and probably one of the scariest ones to actually go for, because if you miss it, there's no backup. It's one attempt and it saves quite a bit of time. But first, there's a bit of concept where I again will be very much taking advantage of this giant flame circle. So the circle is really good, but I have to be a little careful, as I just need to take 1 point of damage from one of the enemies, and then the entire circle will stop being made, which is very, very annoying. It also isn't actually, despite feeling a pretty heavy amount of damage, it's not the most effective DPS from Flameslinger. Well, now I start talking. That's the skip I was talking about. We will be running down on the platforms and then firing a volley shot up to us to get a bit more damage into this guy. As I was saying earlier though, it isn't the most effective form of DPS, as despite its high damage, it's take a very, very long time to ramp up. And therefore we will, at these big HP enemies, be using a combo of 2 attacks. The basic attack, as well as that's not completely off. The basic attack as well as the volley attack. And again, using the volley attack to turn the corner sharply and get more damage in on one of the enemies. That's actually a pretty good ending to this chapter. And the end of the first one is coming up in a few seconds, probably around 30 to 40. And when this is over, we will be getting into the toughest chapters of the one, and easily the most interesting. The first one is chapter 15, which starts out pretty slow and then breaks completely down by probably around a third into it. Yeah, that's not a too bad chapter 14. Not amazing, but good enough. And coming up is 15, as I mentioned earlier. This is arguably the hardest chapter to do fast, as the skip I will be going for, they are not necessarily difficult, but they're difficult to line up and get right quickly, which is a little annoying. And as well, the first combat section is surprisingly inconsistent for how simple it is. So I'll be firing 2 of these arrow volleys, and then I'll be making a pretty big circle and then taking out this whipsat thing. And I got it there. Sometimes one of the enemies that I try to kill with the circle will unfortunately survive, which is really annoying. And coming up is the first part of this chapter that is broken. So we will be using this bomb to destroy a wall that is significantly later in the level. That should be good. It is, of course not. So we will have to try again. So this wall, we can technically clip through just barely, but it's very slow and very difficult. That should be good, yes. So that wall is usually intended to be destroyed by a big ball known as the Roboto Ball, but we can just use a small one instead. And this is the second case of 1 player 2 controller, or 1P2C in the one. I'll be dropping in Soup, then I'll be running off with Flameslinger, dropping out Flameslinger, and then immediately dropping out in a Sprocket. And this is something to pay attention to. I'll be using 2 different Sprockets in the game, in the one, both with a different setup upgrade. This one is completely stock and has absolutely none. I'll be pushing the turret and using Soup, jumping into it with Sprocket, and then immediately swapping to Ghost Roaster. This up-warps me into up to a platform behind this wall, And hopefully, yes, there's a big button up there. If you hit start, if you hit it, it starts a very slow cutscene, and it doesn't really help that cutscene since it doesn't teleport Zook up there, which I'll anyway need to do, which I did with what's called a distance warp. So distance warping is essentially just getting two Skylanders far away, and that's not going on. Two Skylanders far away from each other, and then having player well, this is not going great. And then having player 2 teleport to player 1. I'm really doing badly at this trick, even though I practice it quite a lot. There we go. So he'll be going for another distance warp. Didn't get it, so instantly going into the stat screen to warp warp Zook out, because I need him for a clip here. So this clip is very similar to the one I did in chapter 1. I'll be using a small piece of lagging collision in that door to clip Zook through and get him into the end zone. So now we are coming up in what's in my opinion the hardest chapter in the entirety of the one. I am very, very bad at it, but hopefully it'll go well. So this chapter I will be using Zook and Ghost Roaster again to clip through 2 walls. And it's a very specific combo we use that with the Zook and Ghost Roaster, as only a few of the characters in the game can actually be pushed by Zook's mushrooms, which is what clips us through the wall. Just taking care of a few enemies, as if I don't, these guys will come and be very, very annoying being clipped. That's really, really good for me. So Zook clipping was originally discovered in another Skylanders game and then brought over to Giants. And the second one isn't going as well, sadly. Nah, that's good enough. That's not so good. So that's part of the problem with having to use one player 2 controller. You can accidentally drop one of them, which is very, very annoying. So again, using Ghost Roaster, he's very fast. Not as fast as Flameslinger, but as you can see, he can pass through some of the rolling spikes with which Flameslinger isn't able to do while maintaining top speed. And there I got a cycle skip, which I'm not very good at again. But you can get through that spike gate before it opens up. So I push that block and then switch back to Flameslinger, as the parts where he's slow in this chapter are gone now. I at the same time try to overlap it with the animation of pushing the rock, which I thankfully got. And then I try to, which I failed, which is a little annoying, to do an arrow flame tech back into this teleporter, which I sadly missed. So again, just more Flameslinger movement, running up here and then using his arrow to take care of these guys. So you can finish off that section in 4 arrows. I believe I had to use 5 there, but that's good. Okay, I'm back. We use, since we're playing on an already completed file, we have access to buying what's called Skystone cheats, which skips this game of Skystone, which is very great as it's very annoying to play. And that, a small history lesson for the game if you're interested. That wasn't always the standard. When the game was first being speedrun by a runner named ESA B8 back in 2016, I believe, he didn't actually use Skystone's cheat for like a good few months, which is actually kind of interesting. So here I'll just be using Flameslinger's circle to kill off enemies quickly. And again, like making sure the circles are big enough that I can get in and kill enemies quick, and then and that's phase 1, or the first round of the arena. So the arenas, this phase in the arena is an auto-scroller essentially, as we will have to wait for the platforms to fall and then rise up again anyway. The second one, however, we can save and lose time on. So I use 2 circles there and then dash into the robot. That's guaranteed to take him down no matter what. And a flame circle over there. And then back over here, making one flame circle, going over here. That's not completely optimally. Perfectly, we would I would have been a bit more to the right, so I was able to use a flame slinger to kill 2 of the enemies immediately. That's very annoying. As you can see, I have a lot of snapback in my analog sticks, which is a little annoying, but you get used to it. Pretty decent chapter 9. And coming up is what is probably the most difficult chapter to get right in the entire one, in my opinion. So while chapter 9 skip for skip is probably harder, this one just have so many skips that you have to do quite quickly. As you can see, I'll be using Sprocket with the Zook. Which another thing I haven't talked about is during the swap animation, I try to swap outside of the outside the actual levels, as I can immediately go into the level after part of this drop-in animation has been completed. Now, this is essentially an auto-scroller, so do you guys have anything to talk about?
Hey, looks like something triggered the
Yeah, we have. I would just like to say, mention that our T-shirt can be purchased online at speedrun.store. It'll be only available for the duration of the event, and every sale from it will be directly donated to Alzheimer Fund. And if some of you are interested, type !merch in the chat.
Hey, you just punched a generator. Punching the generator gives us extra shockwave power. Now if you want to see something really cool, press the action button. Bam! We just caused a major shockwave, and each one of those enemies is sure sorry who did. Excellent.
So yeah, usually you would have to go through 3 of these giant robot sections, but thanks to a bit more sprocket magic, we will be able to skip all of them. And this sprocket that I'm using right now is actually different from the one that you saw earlier, in that it's not fully upgraded, and that's a bad start, but somewhat upgraded, which makes the sprocket skips a little different, as you have to be a bit further away. But it also allows us to actually clip through walls without teleporting up. So just running over to this wall and then hopefully getting a quick clip through. That looks good. Yes. And then driving in the tank is actually slightly faster than walking with Sprocket. So I use that to drive up and do another step screen wall where I will be stuck in a loading screen for quite a while. Line her up, line Zook up. That's not so good. Well, what? No. So as you can see there, the turret clipped into the ground, which is suboptimal, of course, as I'll have to set up the trigger again. So it's quite difficult to line up, especially when you're a little nervous. So, got it there. So now I will be swapping to Chop Chop, which Chop Chop is able to move very, very fast, but you need a lot of space to build up this speed, which is why we don't actually use him in the fusion level. We instead use Flame Slinger. As you can see, he is already moving very fast. So that is essentially done by just doing a combo at the start by pressing XX circle and then just mashing circle throughout the rest of the level. Or AAB if you're on Wii, and I don't know the buttons for Xbox, sorry. So we'll just be doing this here. Make sure to take the correct path. If you take the wrong one, which is the other, you will go down a section and then you'll end up at a wall where I don't think we can clip through. I might be wrong though. So again, just as you can see, Chop Chop is so fast he consistently outruns the camera. And coming up is another wall which we will obviously need to clip through. So this skip was in the making for a very long time. We found out a way to get down on the river bottom for like years ago, but we never knew how to actually clip through this wall until I believe a runner by the name of Fishy Ninja came around and and figure out a lot of the sprocket tech we're using now. And I believe this is the only time in the one where you will see this slightly upgraded sprocket. But if you really like sprocket, which I don't think there's a lot of people that do, almost swapped too early, that would have been bad, then there will be a bit more of the unupgraded one. So again, lining up. Here I have a somewhat nice vision doing that. If Zook is somewhat inside of the wall, then I'll pretty much always get it. So that's obviously very nice.
Slice and dice.
And we're through the wall. So the walls are actually surprisingly thin. You would think they're very, very thick, but they're really not. And then just a bit more chop movement. So coming up at the next point is I'm gonna be using the unupgraded sprocket to up-warp into a cutscene again, meaning I don't have to use the stat screen, thank God. And then I'll be using her to do another up-warp right after, where I will be using a swap animation similar to what I did in chapter 15 to get out. As you can see, for some reason the attack with Chop is sometimes very, very slow. I don't quite know why. It might have something to do with the frame rate of the game. So again, back to Zook and the unupgraded sprocket, which you can look the difference between the hats. So the hat that the unupgraded sprocket gives stat points and speed. It actually gives more speed than the other hat, but that's not gonna work, is it? No. Okay. Let's go. But I use the hat that's called the future hat because it's significantly easier to see how you're orienting Sprocket in the water when the head is sticking up rather than if she's not.
Let the flames begin.
And then back to Flameslinger, so. Yeah, I will, similar to Disguisestone's battle, I will be using a key and completed file benefits to skip the minigame entirely. Mashing through some cutscene, and that's the end of chapter 6. Oh, it's not going all too great so far, but that's fine. So, coming up is chapter 11, where we'll be using a bit more of Sprocket upwarp magic, as well as a new Skylander for killing off bosses pretty much immediately. So be excited for that. So the starting part of this level has a very tight cycle, where by using the wing boots we can barely sneak under that crusher. Then we get down here, kill these enemies. Make sure to make a flame circle, as it's able to kill a lot of the small enemies as soon as they come out of the pipe. Flashing down here, more small enemies to kill. Not a flame circle. And I make sure to wait for a bit that so the final set of the small enemies come out in 2 sets. 1 set of 2 and 1 set of 1. And the last one is very, very delayed, so I have to wait a bit with making, or rather finishing the circle. Otherwise it won't actually be killed. So press a button to get this platform to go up. Drop out player 1 and then drop in as Sprocket.
Fix is in.
That's not a very good setup. This might work. So if I press the attack button too early to spawn Mushroom, then Sprocket won't actually build the turret, which I accidentally did there.
Nice specs. If I build it,
So that's the first of the up-warps. This is the second, which I usually don't have trouble with, but obviously today we're messing it up a lot apparently. What is going on here? There we go. So after pushing the turret, I move Zook out of the way as Sprocket upwarping will cause a button to spawn, which triggers a cutscene, which is slow, so I wanna skip that. And then the final upwarp, and yes, we tried. We've tried to just skip the second upwarp and just teleport, use it to go up here immediately. That sadly doesn't work, and this is Igniter. So Igniter is a DPS machine. Originally we used, well, technically originally we used Spyro for this fight, but that was completely routed out in favor of Ninjini, then later a 1P2C featuring Ninjini and Flameslinger, and then eventually we would use Hothead for the fight, as he has a Wii glitch which switches completely with. We aren't on Wii, so we can't actually do that. But Igniter is able to hit the damage cap on every single phase except the third one, and that's because the third one doesn't actually have a damage cap, so it's just deal as much DPS as possible. And he's wrapping, so this part of the fight is probably the biggest spit in the face to PS3 speedrunners. So this fight, due to the way the drill is oriented, we are actually able to hit 2 of its pieces at the same time with some careful positioning, which deal an incredible amount of damage per second. Sadly, it's the second phase which has a damage cap, and not the third where it could actually have been useful. That's very annoying. So we'll be seeing Igniter again in good bit. He will be showing up in the final level again to kill a boss as quickly as possible. And that's chapter 11. With a wrapping drill X, which now that I have unskippable dialogue is probably a good moment to mention that we usually run in French, as that's the fastest language. But because this is an ESA one, we'll be doing it in English so everyone can follow the one. So, outside of the screen I will once again be swapping player 1 to Sprocket, and then do the chapter trick, the drop-in animation trick I told about earlier. Which, if we're lucky, we can actually see what's called hat glitch, which is, if you do this too fast, we will, the hat will not be wet for the characters. But let's see, this is probably some of the more intensive 1P2C in the one. Didn't get it. So the trick coming up right now loses time if you mess it up in 2 ways. There's one, obviously it loses time because you mess it up. And the second is the timer for the wing boots, which is a magic item that boosts our speed. Will be running out quicker, so you have less time to use it. Hopefully, I practice this a lot, so hopefully I can get it somewhat quickly. That looks good. And first try. And so, as you've seen before in the one, Stat Screen Warp has a somewhat random time it takes to drop the Skylanders back in. Up there it can be a problem because it can effectively do so Zook will spawn very far behind and lose a lot of time. That's really annoying. So Sprocket's turret will not build anywhere near walls, which I accidentally did there. And welcome to a new character, Series 2 Hex. And oh, sorry, I forgot to drop a play too. So Series 2 Hex is used in this boss fight. And now you might be asking why I don't use Igniter as before, and that's because Igniter is very good at standstilling targets that stand still, but as you can see, this fight does not stand still, instead it runs around, which means that the DPS Igniter is able to put out is not very effective. On the other hand, we need this fight. We need a lot of DPS because we're going to be pulling up what's called Chompy Mage Quick Kill. This DPS as well need to actually be performed in very powerful attacks, like 100+ damage. And I don't exactly know the reason why it has to be these big hits, but if we deal enough damage, we are able to instantly well, not instantly, we are able to finish off the fight much more quicker than usual. And to make it easier, we will be using an hourglass, which slows down the time of the enemies in the fight. We typically don't use it for the initial phases, if you can only have one magic item on at a time. And it simply makes more sense to use wing boots as is boost or speed. But in this fight, you don't need it. I know a glitch on them more precisely by the name of Stage has done it without actually that might be bad. It's fine. Has done it without using the hourglass, but that is very hard and very inconsistent. So we'll be using it for safety reasons. So in this fight, there's this gimmick where, as you can see, I can press the triangle button and then swap the colors of the disc coming towards me from blue to red. I don't want to swap too much as it actually loses time, and it can be completed in one swap. Effectively, I did 2 here, and that's simply because I want to be at maximum health because of something that's called charms. They are bonuses within the game that boost your damage, which includes increased chance of doing critical hits when you have full health. So it's just for safety reasons, really. This was a pretty good Villikin village. And that's chapter 7. In 2.13, that's actually really good. Okay. Coming up is chapter 10, which is another essentially auto-scroller chapter, which uses Stealth Elf, which, if you're a casual Skylander player and think Skylander speedrun, Stealth Elf is probably the character that comes up, but we don't use her as her movement is very slow. But since this is another auto-scroller, I don't know if you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, right before starting the chapter, I'm gonna remind you of what Alzheimerfonden is all about. So Alzheimerfonden is the national Swedish fundraising organization focusing on Alzheimer's disease and other dementia-related diseases. Alzheimerfonden's aim and purpose is to increase fundraising to the benefit of scientific research in order to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Yearly, its Science Council and Board of Directors grant scientists, researchers and projects around $3 million. With your help, even more projects can be funded. Back to you, River.
Thank you very much. So we are now in a Turk section, which we just need to kill this pirate ship. In this story, we are being attacked by Ghost Pirate, because that's cool, I guess. And these pirates actually have a pretty unique feature. They have a few hits where they can't actually take damage in any visible way. There's a few other enemies that has a similar gimmick, but they lose their armor at the same time. So these pirates, we need both good DPS, but we also need to be able to rapidly attack them to deplete these invincibility hit. And that's where Stealth Elf comes in. He has a very high hit rate, combined with a pretty decent movement speed, and then more importantly, she has the ability to perform a skip later in the chapter, which is another one of these bounce pad flings, we call them in the community, that I showed up in chapter 1. So this one is, in my opinion, a lot easier as and it's also a lot less risky, as if you fail, you won't be losing like 10 seconds. You'll be losing the time to retry it, obviously, but not that much. So again, more combat where you really see that Stealth Elf is a beast. We used to use her for boss fights before Igniter and another Skylander you will be seeing later was discovered to actually deal more damage. And now that I have a bit of downtime, I can probably talk about like the accessibility of this one. You need, for Skylanders Giants in particular, you need an immense amount of different figures to actually be able to run the game optimally. Even I, who've been running on and off for like 4 years, don't actually have an optimal team yet. But if you want to save some money, you can probably buy what's called NFC cards and get access to these characters yourself for like a much cheaper price than than buying the physical toys. And if you want to run the game, don't be like me and run on PS3. Get a Wii U and a Wii copy. It is much faster in pretty much any way, every single way. And again, that's up to personal preference. Some runners prefer playing the game on Wii U as it feels better. Some runners prefer the PlayStation 3 or in the Xbox 360 versions. Again, just more auto-scroller quietly killing these big ships. Which these turret section on the Wii uses the motion controls because it's the Wii, and that makes it a lot easier to quickly aim from one side of the screen to another. And it probably, I haven't played on Wii this game before, so I can't say for certain, makes it harder to actually aim with them. At least I know a trick later in the game where it's significantly harder on Wii to pull off than it is on PS3. So yeah, these sections actually I forgot to mention are another reason to why we use stealth. The watermelons that she fires out of the cannons does just a ridiculous amount of damage to these ships. Before we used to use a Skylander named Robot, which you will be seeing later. But turns out Stealth Elf not only has faster DPS outside of the turret section, but she's also much quicker in the turret section. And again, just as you can see, the characters does have these kind of invisibility hits, which Stealth Elf just burn through incredibly quickly. Now, this chapter actually has some interesting history, as it used to cause a slight controversy with the rules for 100%. So, in this game there's story goals that you have to complete to get a star, and we have decided that when you have gotten all stars in the game, you have 100%, but you can actually skip some of the goals in this in the different chapters and still get these stars. This was the first chapter where such a skip was possible, the one I just performed by launching over a gate. And it caused some debate, because what would consist 100%? Getting the star with all the goals completed, or just getting the star? So eventually it was settled that getting the star was enough. And another skip. So some of the gates with loading zones behind them has so big loading zones that we are able to somewhat clip through the gates by dropping in giants, which this is Swarm, the giant you saw in chapter 1, and he's able to do a few things that we will be viewing more on in the next 2 chapters. He sadly also has slightly worse combat compared to Stealth Elf, but again, we are able to attack in 2 directions with him when using his flying mode, so that pretty much makes up for it. And being a giant, he deals pretty good damage, so he kills enemies quite quickly once he's gotten through their invisibility hits. So, again, while I have some downtimes, another thing I might have forgotten to mention. In the top left corner of the gameplay, you will be seeing these different symbols. Right now there's a gear. Those are elemental zones, and indicates that in this zone Skylanders of the technology element will be doing more damage. We don't really care that much about these, except for in the final chapter, where being able to be in one of these elemental zones is very important for getting a very tight and very difficult cycle that I will hopefully be able to get. So right now we're just waiting for this Cyclops thingy up here to throw bombs down at me. I can then dodge the bomb, pick it up when it's on the ground, and then throw it up at these purple orbs. So you can actually miss the purple orb, and the bomb can land on the ground, but thankfully I avoided that. The bomb will still blow up and damage the orb, but it's quite a bit slower. And that's probably my best ever aerial attack, which is somewhat funny. And we'll be going into chapter 8, which is one of now 2 before 3 chapters that has significant advantage in using a giant. We will obviously be seeing some other characters as well, but more on that in a bit. Starting out is a hopeful cutscene skip that we can get by breaking the store and getting through quickly. After that I will be dropping in what is a light core. Light core Skylanders are similar to the regular Skylanders, but they have this ability to essentially deliver a nuke the first time they're placed on the portal. And that allows me to take out the enemies up here pretty much immediately. Usually we would be using the Anvil Vein magic item for it, but I don't own that, and the Light Core is decently fast as well. So coming up right now, I clear out some of these enemies and then drop in Zook as player 2 again. So I mentioned earlier that only a select few Skylanders are actually able to interact with his mushrooms. Swarm is one of these Skylanders, and as you can see, we can just walk right up them and skip a quite big section. So here I enter a cutscene. So this is one of the reasons why we use a giants. That skips some of the checkpoints which load assets in the game that you would usually need to complete it. But by using a giant, it doesn't really matter, as we are able to get around that pretty easily. Will that work? If you stand on the bounce pad as the cutscenes end, you're able to actually get a pretty big bounce and then get up earlier. But I sadly didn't get it there. And just because it's ESA, you can use that bounce pad to jump up there and skip turning the platform by itself. I don't usually go for it, as whenever I'm on good pace, this chapter is pretty late in the run, and I always miss it when I'm nervous. So coming up now is a small cutscene skip that I'll be setting up for now. So by throwing that giant bomb and destroying that cannon, well, I should probably explain what it's skipping. At the end of a road coming up, there will be a section where Callie and Flynn, the two NPCs right over there, will be yelling at me to destroy the cannons if I skip them. But by using that giant bomb as well as this small bomb I just picked up, I'm able to destroy both of the cannons and then completely skip the dialogue, which saves like a few seconds. And now this trick is weird. So we will be using Bouncer to kill this troll, firstly because he's annoying, and then we'll be destroying this wall by using his shoulder missile attack, and that would teleport us up here for some reason. Now I believe the reason to that because the wall, when you destroy it, spawns a loading zone. Well, not a loading zone, spawns a trigger, and when you enter this trigger, the dialogue starts. Now the thing is, we can actually destroy the wall up there with Swarm by using his ranged attack like that. But there isn't actually a Skylander hitbox up in the loading zone that triggers it. Bouncer's shoulder missiles, on the other hand, will actually trigger this loading zone and allow us to warp up into the cutscene. Again, it's not a loading zone, it's a cutscene trigger, but I mess it up. So now chapter 2. The triumphant return of Ghost Roaster. And my game crashed. So that can happen. That's somewhat annoying. We will hopefully still be underestimated. So I usually don't get crashes on PS3. That's one of the advantages, but obviously because this is an important one, it has to happen. And hopefully nothing breaks by turning it off. That doesn't look promising. Thank God.
While the PS3 will take its while, let me just say something in the meantime, because it's not certain what causes Alzheimer's, but plagues that are disturbing the neurons and their signals pathways are the prime suspects. Upcoming drug treatments hopefully can eliminate the plague and slow down the progression of the disease. There are several ongoing clinical trials around the world for candidate drugs. These hopeful treatments would not have been possible without the increased awareness and financial support for Alzheimer's research in the past years. As we speak, hopeful antibody treatments, vaccines, and molecules are underway. To help scientists complete the quest for a cure, they need more funds. So guys, keep it up. Let's keep these donations coming.
So, this is chapter 2, and I believe this is the chapter that has seen the most changes in Skylanders. So, the first one that we consider, that we know happened, used Treewex. The next ones that had a different Skylanders used a core called Drill Sergeant. Then it went back to Treewex, then it went to Swarm, then it went to a competition between Swarm and Hothead, and then it was confirmed that Swarm is actually faster for these levels. So, small sequence break here. I go into this room early to talk to Persephone. It spawns us closer on the second visit than on the third visit, which is where you're usually supposed to do it, so it just makes more sense to do it here. So, I can actually talk about why Swarm is faster. As you can see, Swarm can destroy this wall from a distance without slowing down. Every other giants needs to slow down to be able to destroy them early. Swarm is the exception, and that just saves so much time. And we'll be swapping to Ghost Roaster to do what's called Ghost Roaster jumping. Now, I will say, if you like this technique, you should probably check out Skylanders Spyro's Adventure, as it is featured much more prominently in that game than it is in Skylanders Giants. And again, we save a bit of time because Ghost Roaster's dash is just so fast. So I enter that hall to reach a checkpoint that was actually very fast, which spawns Ulrich and spawns this motor when I talk to him. If I don't go into that hut, then Ulrich won't spawn and the motor won't be there, and I'll be essentially shot, soft locked. That was pretty good. So just using Ghost Roaster's attack again. He thankfully deals enough damage that he's able to one-shot everything, which is very nice. And another cannon. So luckily, after this chapter, there will be no more cannons, and we'll be back to playing as Flameslinger. Oh. That jump is so much harder than it looks, and I'm actually surprised I got it first try, and very quickly as well. Thank you. So, and that's chapter 2 and the last we'll see of Ghost Roaster. And that is a world record individual level tie, which is awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, back to Flameslinger and into which I'll be honest is probably the most, if you get it right, it's one of the most visually pleasing chapters to play. If you get it wrong, it just looks like you're a giant noob. Sorry for using a bit of a cursor word. But the walls in this level are actually surprisingly like magnetic. They will really glue your Skylanders to them if you get too close. Again, a bit of block puzzle, and then I'll be going into the first battle arena for this chapter. Which, I'll be honest, I'm not very fond of this arena. It's very annoying, but thankfully we have an elemental boost, which is great. Except there's really only one enemy which need the extra damage here. Thankfully the elemental zone carries into the next section where we will definitely be needing it. So this chapter was originally done with a Giants. It was one of the chapters I alluded to in at the start of chapter, chapter 8. But a runner by the name of Ultrastar, who also figured out the giant clip in chapter 10, figured out you could just clip through a gate later in this chapter, which cut out a lot of the use for giants. And another runner by the name of, I want to call him EIQ, but I believe it's ELQ or LQ, figured out that by using Flameslinger here and then using circles as well as volleys to kill the first hut, it's actually significantly faster to just play this chapter as Flameslinger. And I kind of messed up the combat, so I wanna hit all the armor pieces of the Drow elves thingy Cyclopses with the axe, because if I don't, they will get too close to me, and then they will go into their spin where they are invincible, and it's just a giant pain to deal with. So coming up is the Giants clip, where I'll be doing a bit of variation of what is usually do, which also mean my commentary will be a little bad. So using Swarm to clip through the gate, and then doing 1P2C with Flameslinger. It's not super good. So I got a bit too far ahead with Flameslinger, so he was dragged back towards Swarm, but other than that, it was pretty fine. That was actually really, really clean.
I almost let you win, but no.
So I pick off this bomb to destroy this this wall. So this section was typically done with Swarm, but it turns out that Flameslinger is actually a bit quicker. So it's very cycle dependent, so usually you wouldn't save time, but there's a few sections where moving faster is just advantaged. So coming up now is another launch jump, where you would usually use Robot, but Flameslinger is a bit faster, so we are committed to going forward. But starting well. That looks good. Yes, so this jump essentially allows us to use Flameslinger down here and then have to swap to Robot a little later. So I did originally try to drop in Robot as player 2 to save a swap to what's it called, to Flameslinger back again, but it turns out the arena was significantly... That might have soft-locked me. Pray to God. Turns out it's actually a bit slower to do that. So this is just more arena combat, there's really not much to say. We used Robot because he's good DPS at a long range, which is very, very helpful, so... Yeah. So the story right now actually is that we need to find some mole thingy, which can lead the way into an oracle thingy, which will tell us where the chapter we entered earlier, chapter 14 and chapter 15, where they are, but we already kind of did that, but we are playing the chapter so much out of order that the story really doesn't make any sense anymore. So again, it's not Flameslinger, Robot just shedding through the enemies. He has, I think he has what is the best range in the entire franchise. Might be wrong with some of the later games. And he actually deals pretty good damage with DPS. So the giant sword dude that we can see up in the background will be the final boss for the chapter. And hopefully we'll get to see him if I haven't soft locked. If that happens, we'll just continue on with the next chapter. This one is already a little bit delayed. So these big guys with the flamethrower, you saw them earlier in chapter 14, and I think they're like the main reason to why we really need to use Robot, because there's a lot of them at the same time, and we just don't have the DPS with Flameslinger to deal with them effectively. So hopefully you spawn. Yeah, I was right, we soft locked. Well, that's annoying. On to chapter 3. This isn't completely ruled by the rules, but we don't have time to start the chapter over again. So this is my personal favorite chapter to speedrun, as it has some of it has some fun skips and it has some very fun movement. So starting out, I'll be using Flameslinger, clearing out the zombies. What I mentioned earlier with armor in chapter 10 was some of these elf guys. And we're dropping in another character. So this is the Earth Giant Crusher. He used to be incredibly powerful, broken, and important for the one, but he wasn't entirely routed out, but he was for the most part, because a lot of the skips that he was used in simply have easier and or faster alternative using Sprocket now. So the strat we're doing now, we are skipping a key gate, which is technically slower than just putting in the key, but it allows us to take this key and use in another door, which is something you'll be seeing again in chapter 4 coming up shortly. So I pick up this bomb as it's able to instantly break out the armor of all these 4 elves, or droves, or whatever they're called. Which allows me to kill them much, much faster. So again, more combat using the flame circles to their full potential. And like, I really have to say that like, Flameslinger was built for speedrunning. Like, he has every single attack we would need to go fast. He has a speedy dash, he has decent DPS, he has a way to hit a lot of enemies, and he has a way to hit enemies on ledges above him, which is very, very important. So, coming up is another one of those skips that you only get 1 attempt at, so we're gonna be playing it a little safe. I do have a Skylander with me as a backup, but I would rather not have to use him. And we got it. So, when you kill all the enemies, usually a cutscene will spawn trigger that will destroy the bridge. If you're close to the battle gate and you kill the spellcaster, the one in the green hood, and only that enemy, you will be able to completely skip the cutscene trigger and go through it and run across the bridge. Originally, you would use this guy Eyeball to get an upboard, which is different from the sprocket ones. To skip a long puzzle section and some combat, but turns out we can just skip the skip entirely, which is also what it's named, Eyeball skip. So yeah, the Skylander speedrunning community, sorry to say, we aren't very good at naming skips. We'll have to potentially improve at that. And let's just fix this. So the guy up there, he's called Brock, and thankfully he's invincible right now, so I don't softlock again. But he's essentially holding the guy in here hostage, and we have to beat him in an arena fight to free him. And we need this guy because he has a giant robot or something. So again, just more combat using the flame circle to finish off the enemies as quickly as possible. And now is the Brock quick kill. I do a 1 flame circle, and then I mash the attack one, which kills the boss very quickly. That was actually a pretty good chapter 3. 3 or 5, that's fine enough. That's fine enough. So coming up now is chapter 5, which has, I think it's the oldest skip still done in the run, though we use a variation found by a runner by the name of Ultrastar, who has been running this game since like 2015, 2016. He's been around for a very, very long time.
But before we enter chapter 5, let me just remind the viewers of the fact that every donation can help caregivers and reduce the financial cost of supporting loved ones with Alzheimer's. Blood biomarkers for Alzheimer's can now be detected via a sample blood test. This is revolutionizing the ability to diagnose Alzheimer's. Once a researcher at Uppsala University, funded by Alzheimer's Foundation, had discovered an antibody that has the potential to become the first disease-modifying drug against Alzheimer's. This could be the first step towards a cure. Back to you, River.
Yes. So throughout this chapter, I've been strategically using this volley attack to destroy objects that would otherwise be in the way when I tried and dash in and defeat enemies. I also tried using an arrow early to destroy a snowball that's usually around here, but I failed that and had to run against the gate for a bit longer, which was unfortunate. Another light cold blast. We used to use Flameslinger and volley shots to take down enemies in here, but that was finicky to say the least, so thankfully someone figured out that it's actually faster to just drop in a light core. And the final combat section before we will get into to one of the most interesting skip and one of the coolest looking in my opinion, as well as probably the highest speed you will ever see Flameslinger attain in any of the Skylanders games. Again, just using the flame circle, I have said it many times and I will say it again, Flameslinger is built for speedrunning. Using another bounce pad volley to get up here. and then using... Yes! So the ice in these ice bowls, this skip is called Ice Bowl Skip, funny enough, actually gives Flameslinger an incredible, like, ridiculous amount of speed when using his dash attack. And we can take advantage to get up a ledge. Originally we would use Stealth Elf and her Somersault attack to get up this ledge, but Ultra Star, who I mentioned earlier, figured out that that is slow and we can just use Flameslinger instead. Which also pretty much allows us to save some time in the puzzles, as we can always have the laser pointed at the objects and smelting ice, which is the big gimmick here. So there I used a slow dash to make sure I wouldn't overshoot the lever, which would be very, very annoying to say the least.
May I interrupt you just for one
Of course,
moment?
that's...
Because we received $200 donation from GBG 227 with a comment, "Thanks for the great marathon!" Exclamation mark.
So, for this chapter, we could do a very difficult strat called Azumi. I am very bad at it, and we are already on pace to be overestimated, so we're skipping that. Instead, we will be seeing some combat with Flameslinger, which is, in my opinion, always fun. We combine the standard arrow attack again with the volley attacks to gain an incredible amount of damage per second, or DPS, and take out the enemies immediately. Coming up in this section is more light core bombing, light core nuking, call it whatever you want. And it will be used to gain the fastest cycle we know of in this section. So the level that I'm playing right now, the entire gimmick of it is that you can choose multiple paths and get a very, very different level each time you play by just swapping path. If I had taken another path at the start, I would be fighting spiders instead of giant robots. If I took another path here, I would be a big fish in a small pond instead of a small fish in a big pond, which would obviously save time on traveling, but the enemies are so powerful in there that that we can't take them out easily, and that loses a lot of time. And that hopefully, yes, that worked. Sometimes some of the enemies will survive the light core bomb, and then you just have to end their suffering with an arrow from Flameslinger. So there I walk because this level is cycle based, or the area there is cycle based, so it doesn't matter if I dash as long as I reach the block, and saving the dash allows me to instead do a much faster charge later. So here I say skip a lot of block pushing to very quickly get up, save this princess, and then get out. So now she only owes me half the kingdom. So this is the last challenge. Well, it's not the last, but it's effectively the last. And it's probably the most annoying one as well, as the troll up there, he will damage us nearly no matter what we do, and that's very, very annoying because he puts us in hit stun, which doesn't allow us to dash immediately, which loses time. There, another small use of Flameslingers. Flameslingers immense momentum with the dash to skip pushing some blocks and getting down to a later ledge much faster. And 216. That's actually pretty good. So coming up now should be chapter 4 and the reintroduction of the wing boots into the one. And this is just more combat and a bit of puzzle solving, so if you have anything to say.
Well, indeed I do, because Jens J56 sent $5 with no comment.
So yeah, shout out to Jens. He's a long-time member of the Skylanders speedrunning community, and he's actually one of the moderators of Skylanders Giants. And that comment just, not that donation, just made me skip a trick. My fault. I use a launch and fling over the gate to carry this key to the store. Unlike some of the other ones we've done where we used Stealth Elf, we are again using Flameslinger's momentum with the wing boots to get over. I'm pretty sure that was actually like one of the few tricks in this one that I actually came up with originally. And it's pretty much been completely reworked by Valentin and other ones, so that's fun. But again, more combat with Flameslinger. There is a skip using a Sprocket and Soup, and I missed them completely. That's kind of annoying. There's a skip with the Sprocket and Soup that you can do, but I am almost as bad as the Chapter 9 Soup clipping. And again, there you see the greatness of snapback in my analog stick. So right now I will be trying to, and we got it. So as you can see right now, something isn't quite right. I am walking, even though I probably shouldn't be able to. That's because we enter a loading zone to enter the HUD at the same time as I tried to play a cutscene. In fact, we skipped another cutscene just now by hogging the wall around the cannon. Usually it would spin around, look at this area, and then play a cutscene. And we've in fact already skipped another one by destroying that gate as we enter the dialogue zone, the dialogue trigger. We are able to completely skip one of the cutscenes. So now there's a bit of RNG. As you could see, the guy with the hat in the background was walking. That means we can't go up to him immediately. We have to talk to this guy. That's at least the setup that I've been able to somewhat figure out to consistently work.
You may now enter Pirate Island, but watch your back.
And we're ready to see Crusher again, which is always cool. Crusher is, in my opinion, one of the coolest giants. A lot of people don't like him because he's very slow, which is not actually true. On long stretches he's the fastest giant, I believe, but because of the walls in some of the levels we don't actually use him. And that was very smooth. So that stacking was similar to the one I did in chapter 3, getting up the ledge early and then skipping part. So there I tried to skip that block puzzle and I failed it because I'm not very good at it apparently. So that skip is like using the momentum of his go out and then going up the rocks. That's really the best way I can explain it. We used to use another Skylander for it, but then it was figured out that Crusher could skip a combat zone, and then it just became faster to use him. Even though he's kind of a pain in... yeah, he's a pain to use in this section because his attacks are very, very difficult to aim. And I'm really not doing very well with it right now. But that's fine. So the next section is actually even worse, as some of the enemies will have Crusher auto-aim away from the ones we actually want to damage with his big attack. So I'm gonna be using the roller to kill some of the characters. And that was actually pretty good. So if you are unlucky, you can actually have the big guys with the shield on the arms block up in an invincible state and punch you, which is very, very annoying. And the final Skystone battle. And that's chapter 4.
But if you seize that Flynn fella, you tell him that he still owes me.
A pretty decent chapter 4, if I do say so myself. A cutscene. So, unless I've done my routing wrong, which I don't think I did, we are coming up on chapter 16, but just to be sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that should be the last chapter. So, this is the final chapter, and it is by far the hardest one to get the movement properly in, because there's a very, very tight cycle that we can barely make. And it's also the only chapter in Giants to not have an intro dialogue we have to skip through, which is obviously nice. So coming up immediately is a skip where we'll be using the big hitbox of a giant again to climb up a wall. So using this, I'll be going into this room, and the reason for that is 1, PS3 is slow, and 2, it resets a cycle up here, which makes it slightly faster. So right there, I just had a button, pressed a button behind the gate, and that's because again, Bouncer, when he uses his shoulder missiles, actually transform his hitbox into where the X is laying, which allows us. And I messed up. That's annoying. So I tried to get those enemies in the same flame circles, but I couldn't do that, so I doubt we're gonna make the cycle now. Which is a little sad, but that's how it is. And we might? Nah, that's too late. That's too late, yeah. So if you're fast enough, the tip of this platform will be at the edge with the big button with the double-way arrow, and you can press that immediately and then get out, but I missed it here, sadly. Yeah, that wasn't the fastest. You can if you face backwards through those what are they called? The flames. You can actually get through them faster, but that kinda didn't go so well, which is annoying. So this section is a chase section where we will be using Flameslinger, just mashing his dash through it, and time will be coming up very, very shortly. So this section is it's not difficult in any way. It's literally just mashing one of your attack buttons, but I messed it up so many times and I don't quite know why. Well, I do, it's because I'm bad, but coming up, the final boss, and the only time in the one where we get to see Camo. Camo deals an incredible amount of damage, like, it's honestly ridiculous. And usually you would use 2 camos to be optimal, but I only have 1, so we're gonna have to substitute with Igniter again. As you can see, he completely switched him. And that's... And that's another face done. So this fight originally was done using originally it was probably done using a character called Boomer. It was then later replaced with Ninjini, and then Ninjini plus 1 P2C, and then it ended up with double Igniter, and then Camo was found, and now it's double Camo, which I doubt we're gonna find anything faster, because as you can see, he deals quite a lot of damage. And time is coming up in 3, 2, 1, time. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. And that is, well, if we don't count the soft lock and the crash, that is definitely the fastest one on video ever completed on PlayStation 3, which is quite cool. Yay!
Yeah, well, congratulations on the individual level as well.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, this has been an amazing run.
Thank you. Thank you very much to ESA. Despite all the console trouble putting us so far behind, I was still able to complete.
Yeah, it was a still fantastic run to witness. And next up is coming up is Sonic Roboblast 2 by Argix. So stay tuned, guys.